This podcast contains mature subject matter and is intended for entertainment purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised. Coming up on the Beautifully Ridiculous podcast.
If the guy had molested or killed a child, he was dead. I'm telling you, no matter what we did.
We're back at the Beautifully Ridiculous podcast. My name is Katie Campbell, your hostess with the mostest. I apologize for my hiatus. I should stop apologizing for my hiatuses. Hiatuses? What is the plural of hiatus?
Hey, I'm beautifully ridiculous. Yeah, I'm such a hot mess. La-da-dee-da. So I'm beautifully ridiculous. Imperfect, no less. La-da-dee-da, la-da-da-da-dee-da. La-la-la-la-dee-dee-da.
I was correct. The plural noun is hiatuses. I just looked it up. Sorry. Okay, squirrel. It's fine. No, I'm not going to apologize anymore for the fact that I go dark, that I am a super creative person, and I'm very, very affected by fucking everything. I really should get a thicker skin. I'm aware of this, but it doesn't matter. I don't care anymore what anybody thinks. The state of the world right now is a frightening place for me, and I sometimes just have to recoil and become a recluse and just grapple with my own inner demons, and that's fine. That's fine. I'll pick it up when I'm ready to pick it up, and nothing that is meant for me will go past me. So I'm just gonna continue. In this episode, I sort of go more into Tom's background and how he got started before he went into correction. So let's listen to a bit of that. How did it change your view of humanity?
How did it change my view of...
Did it change your view of humanity over the years?
No. I worked in logging camps.
Yeah.
When I was 16, Queen Charlotte, and I worked on a ship for 6 years.
Did you? What were you on a ship for? What were you doing?
It was a freighter. It went from Frisco to Skagway.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you deckhand? What were you doing?
2-week trip. I met Pat, and so I've ended up giving him up because, hey, we had a relationship, and here I'm gone for 2-3 weeks on that thing. But I enjoyed being on the ships and all that kind of stuff. But you it's like being in a jail. You have to get along with people.
Yes.
Some guy there and he's farting and snoring all night. Got to learn how to adjust. You shut it off, go to sleep.
So when you worked at Haney, was it like 8 to 4 Monday to Friday? Or did you do weekends? Was it shift work? What were you doing? What kind of a...
On the ship?
No, at Haney.
Oh, the Haney. Well, I started off as a correctional officer, and as I said, there was 2 ways to go: security, a guard, or the program. And so I went into program, took courses. They sent me to Simon Fraser for evening courses. I go on afternoon shift, and myself and other people, we drive into SFU to some of the psychologists, and they would talk about human relationships in regards past and future. So you get better understanding when I'm talking to you or talking to inmates. The words I'm using would be different for some people than I'd use. So understand what you're saying and what you're doing, because it has an impact on people.
Yes.
And try to get that message to inmates way down the line that, people think people don't care. And that was the big issue. Nobody cares about me, all that kind of stuff. Self-pity and all that kind of stuff. Hey, every road has a corner on it. So,
yes, it does.
And you're at the corner.
Yeah.
So, but you have to be able to communicate like I am with you.
Right.
You have to, no matter what the guy's done. The guy maybe commit suicide, and you've been there trying to work with him, and he finally got something around it,
Interesting.
But the hardest part was for me is kids who ended up in tough, and committed suicide, to talk to the mother or father that Billy not coming home. So.
And you had to make those phone calls? That was you?
Yeah.
Wow. That takes a toll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but what can I say? In some ways, I remember one mother, she cried and then she put her hands out. She says, "You're home," He finally, and for her, huge relief. He'd beat her up, take her money, she'd get welfare, whatever, take everything. Yeah.
Were there a lot of young kids? Like, what was the average median age of some of these inmates when you were there? Because you keep saying...
Inmates?
Between 17...
There wouldn't have been anybody, probably the oldest guys would be in their mid-30s.
Oh, okay, so they're all
and
very young.
And they were kind of the guys you had to watch, like for me, because they were the guys who were smart. You get the guys like Clifford Olson, all these 16, 17, those guys are what they call harebrained. Well, let's do it, no matter what the consequence. All that stuff. Where the older guys, they would think, "Hey, wait a minute. And they wouldn't get it. They were very security-wise. They're not going anywhere. They want to get out as early as possible. And so they had an influence. If some guys were going to do something, they would say, "Hey, not when I'm there. If you're going to do that, I'll be in the shower." And there's showers in the main jail. The office was here with glass all the way around it, and their toilets and showers were there, and their showers were open. You could see everybody in their shower. Toilets, they had a little position. So if things happened, those areas were the ones that you had to make sure.
Really watch for.
Yeah. And for people like me, the staff I worked in, they were different. They had to do things what they thought were right. And I looked at things different than a lot of staff, and vice versa, but we all worked together for our own safety and security, so. But,
one of the questions that I had, or one of the epiphanies I had...
I enjoyed it.
Did you?
Oh.
Rewarding?
I left the house, whatever shift I was on, and as soon as I got on road, going up to the institution, my whole brain just went jail. Kids, when I came down the access road, which was about a mile long from the main jail, when I got out of the parking, I was driving along, all I could see was Pat and Brian and Kathy, and what they were doing and what we did. And so you switch that off, because I had staff work for me. They were just sweating.
Yeah.
Worried about coming to work and
just switch it off. When I was doing some prep work to come and meet you, Tom, I had the epiphany. This next little section here was an epiphany that I had leading up to the interview with Tom. So we had decided and agreed that I would interview him in like late September, early October of 22, but we couldn't figure out how to get our schedules to match up until January of 23. So I had a few months to sort of prepare and think about what I was going to ask this man. And one of the epiphanies that I had was thinking how many people's hands I've shaken in my lifetime. If you're in Western society, I'm specifically North American, I was taught from a very young age, like 5, 6 years old, that when you greet someone, you shake their hand, and I was taught how to do it properly. And thinking about that, thinking about how Tom spent 30 years working with these inmates who are, for lack of a better term, incorrigible people, all the characters that he would have come into contact with, and Clifford Olson being one of them, to be in the same room as such a person, my God, and then to work and be in a building with 400 people that have the propensity for violence, and the things that these people have done, the things that these people have confessed to, and the things that these people, we have no idea all the rest that they have done and not been caught or confessed to. That's... Ooh, when you think about that, do you know your neighbor? Do you know the person you are married to? Do you know your own parents? Do you know? Like, wow. And then thinking about all the people that I've shaken hands with in my almost 40 years on this planet. Because it's just a greeting. It's just a standard, hello, how are you? Shake that person's hand. What has that hand done? What has that hand done? What is that hand guilty of? Guilty of negative things, or is that a safe hand? I don't know. It sent shivers up and down my spine, realizing how many hands I have shaken and how many of those hands would be rapists, pedophiles, or murderers. I don't know. There's no way to know. That's... oof. For me, that was a big epiphany. And, just goes back to that age-old saying of, you are the company you keep. So what kind of company you keeping? I'm 39. I've shaken a few hands in my life. But I will have unwittingly shaken hands with rapists, pedophiles, and murderers. I don't know for any fact who hands I'm shaking. I don't think you could say that. You would know these people and what they did and still shake their hand. And my hat's off to you, because I don't know that I could do that. When you were shaking one of their hands, if you did that feel anything, tingle up your spine, anything?
Never shake hands with an inmate.
Oh, you wouldn't?
Never.
No, not
okay. In there. Number one, you have to protect that guy.
Okay.
And he got the same treatment as anybody else.
Okay.
If that changed, he was targeted by the other inmates.
Oh.
Right? Yeah. That he was an informer, the stories would come up. So whatever he was doing and in there, and they never ever gave out what his sentence was.
It's just strictly flour, isn't it?
In fact, if they found out he was a rapist or anything like that, he was done. They kill him.
Sometimes I have
especially children, if the guy had molested or killed a child, he was dead. I'm telling you, no matter what we did, the person who was a pedophile,
is the lowest on the rung.
Well, he should not live. That's where they're at. They had a better decree of how people should treat each other. And if that's what he did to children, he deserved death penalty, and they all get in on kick, stab, whatever. The end of a broom, all sharpened up, boom, boom, boom. As many holes as they put him.
Excuse me.
Oh no, thank you very much, Pat. I appreciate it. That's lovely.
I'm lost with gluten.
You're okay. It's lovely. No, thank you very much.
If George had said something before, I could have,
No, it's okay.
You have to know in your book, the inmates have their own code, and molestation, child rape, and those people are crucified. They're going to get, and they do. They die. I mean, I've had several guys end up in the hospital. They put a broom right up.
Oh my word!
You know what I mean? Because that's what he. That's how he. Yeah. So they gave him. The word went around. And one guy said he got what he was coming. The inmate told me. Yeah.
It's
amazing. It's a different. A jail is its own society.
Yes.
It's not just a building. Those people in there make it what it is, and it's brutal.
Very, very brutal.
Unforgiving and final. Like they say, that guy's done. He is done. he'll get stabbed going to the kitchen and whatever, because there's areas where they all know you go here and down stairwells, nobody can see from the bottom to the top,
But that never, like, do you get PTSD now? Do you sleep now? Or does any of that come up for you now that you're retired and in your 80s? Or is that sort of in the past and you've been able to compartmentalize that?
Well, now I think there is no law. The ability of people or judges or lawyers to change things verbally, that's what the inmates, there's no consequences. In those days, in the 50s and 60s, you did that, Willoughby Olson. There's a consequence of that, and they knew that. They thought that was good. When those things started disappearing, it left these guys in limbo. Do that, they didn't even get any kicks out of it. And that thing, they would do things tragically because of no consequences. And they complain more than I do, but I think our society is just on a downhill slide, no respect, all little things you could put in there, they're all there. People have to say sir to a teacher. Good morning, sir. Whatever. So, and I don't know if it'll ever change and come back. Our generation's on the way out, so who'll take it over? The only thing that's holding things together is sports figures, whether it be hockey, football, golf, or whatever. The young generation still resonate on these people as role models. Tiger Woods or Rory McIlroy or whatever. So, which is good, because the generations need a figurehead. They need somebody, and in Britain it's the Queen and all that stuff.
Right.
So if that's not there, you got a society that's just drifting and no direction. Yeah. Well, like families, everybody needs a little direction, even me, But you're in that environment. Those things are happening. We had a staff member, and he was the best guy. Everybody in the jail loved this guy. And he had a work gang, and he did all the pruning and landscaping, and he had a gang out there, about 8 or 9 guys, and they were always planting things. He's working away in the middle of the afternoon, and this inmate, we thought was a great guy, he walked behind this guy and hit him over the head with a shovel.
Oh my gosh.
And he's outside the institution up there, and they were doing flower beds and everything. He come up, he hit him right over the back of the head. And the guy's name was Ralph Haney, and he went down. He never passed out. And for somebody to come up, and here's this guy, he's got the shovel. And so Ralph rolled a couple of times, and one of the other inmates grabbed the guy.
Oh, really? And took him out. What was his rationale for hitting the man over the head?
Well, I think the other guy didn't want to be part of somebody getting killed,
Of course. Why? Yeah, wouldn't want to do that.
I don't know if you can get through there, but you have to go.
But that's that business.
Yes, it
I
is.
mean, you've got unpredictable people who could be a bad letter from home or all kinds of stuff that just stimulate them, want freedom.
Anything could set them off emotionally.
You don't know when you go in there. Those, those 800 guys.
Yeah. Yeah, incredible. And so you were there for 30 years.
So it gives you, when you walk in, and and they have a control center, and there's gates open and close, open and close. They both can't open together.
Right.
So everybody comes in, pass into the jail through that center is checked. So the inmates, nobody get out. But once you go in there, you're in their area. You're the staff member, but each unit got 50 people in it, and they've got bad news or revenge or whatever it all is. But the one thing in that jail, there wasn't in the way of drugs.
At Haney, there were lots of drugs.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
They would try things, try different skins and chew them to see what they could get. But there was no in the kitchen, But
I have
now,
to go in a few minutes anyway.
they haven't built any jails for the last 20 years.
No, they haven't built any new jails for the last 20 years.
See, now the system is, okay, let's work a system where we can handle it in the community.
Right.
So Essendale closes, Dave Barrett closed it, and so you have, 100 people who are mentally really challenged, need help, food and everything.
Yeah.
Those people are on the street now.
Yes. Riverview Hospital. Arguably one of the worst decisions that has ever been made in this province of British Columbia is the closing of Riverview Hospital in July of 2012. I'm going to read for you from Wikipedia what Riverview was. Riverview Hospital was a Canadian mental health facility located in Coquitlam, British Columbia. It operated under the governance of the BC Mental Health and Addiction Services Unit until it closed in July 2012. Let's keep going. It was located on the Lougheed Highway. In 1876, Royal Hospital in Victoria was converted to British Columbia's first facility to house mentally ill patients. Due to crowding, Royal Hospital was closed and the patients moved to the new Provincial Asylum for the Insane in 1878. Again facing problems of overcrowding at the turn of the 20th century in 1904, the provincial government purchased 1,000 acres, 400 hectares, in then rural Coquitlam for the construction of Riverview Hospital and the adjacent colony farmlands. Construction of a temporary, quote, hospital for the mind, end quote, began at the Riverview property in 1909. In 1911, British Columbia's first provincial botanist, John Davidson, established an arboretum, a nursery, and a botanical garden on the hospital lands, often with the assistance of patients, as there existed a belief in therapeutic value of this kind of work. The botanical garden was moved to the new University of British Columbia in 1916, but the arboretum and nursery remained. In 1913, a permanent provincial mental hospital administered by Henry S. and Young was opened, treating about 300 seriously mental ill male patients. The building was originally constructed to hold 480 patients, but by the end of the year it housed 919 patients. By this time, Colony Farm was producing over 700 tons of crops and 20,000 gallons of milk in a calendar year, using mostly patient labor. In 1950, the male chronic building was renamed West Lawn, the female chronic building East Lawn, and the acute psychopathic unit became Center Lawn. The hospital itself was then called the Provincial Mental Hospital Essendale, Essondale.
But
I have
now,
to go in a few minutes anyway.
they haven't built any jails for the last 20 years.
No, they haven't built any new jails for the last 20 years.
See, now the system is, okay, let's work a system where we can handle it in the community.
Right.
So Essendale closes, Dave Barrett closed it, and so you have, 100 people who are mentally really challenged, need help, food and everything.
Yeah.
Those people are on the street now.
Yes. In 1983, the West Lawn building was closed. In 1984, 141 acres of Riverview's upper hillside were sold, subdivided, and developed as the Riverview Heights subdivision, with 250 single-family homes, and the remaining Riverview forest was acquired by the city of Coquitlam. In 1924, the acute psychopathic unit, later called Centerlawn, opened. Several hospital staff lived at the remote site, and by 1927, this had grown into a small community called Essendale, which included shops, a school, and a fire hall. In 1930, the 675-bed female chronic unit, later called the East Lawn, opened due to overcrowding. 1930, 675 female beds. The first phase of what would eventually be called the Crease Clinic, the Veterans Unit, opened in 1934, with the second phase opening in 1949, giving Riverview its most iconic building. Finally, in 1955, the Tuberculosis Unit, later called North Lawn, opened, marking the peak of patient residents. Opened in 1913, and the peak of patient residents happened in 1955. In 1956, the hospital had reached 4,306 patients. By 1959, the charge of mental health services was transferred from the provincial secretary to the newly formed Department of Health Services. The transfer was followed by a transition from custodial care to more active psychiatric care of patients. In 1967, Davidson resigned as deputy minister and was replaced by F.G. Tucker, a resident physician of Essendale, Riverview, from 1953, who, in 1959, became the clinical director of the Crease Clinic. A steady decline in beds and facilities started in the 1960s and continued up to 2004, at which point there were only 800 beds. Some say the reason for this decrease was initially due to the introduction of the antipsychotic medications and the development of psychiatric units in acute care hospitals, as well as a move toward outpatient care. As early as 1967, a decision had been made to downsize Riverview Hospital. The determination was first brought up officially on paper 3 years after the publication of the Mental Health Act of 1964, which intended to have mental health care be as readily available to the population as that of physical health. What a novel idea. Over 80 years later and we're still waiting for that shit? Okay, all right. Don't get upset, Katie, don't get upset. The two acts worked in conjunction so that by 1970 there were 17 mental health care centers in British Columbia, 12 of which had opened within the previous 4 years. It's a good start. Decreases continued. In 1969, the provincial government appointed a committee to review the role of mental health branch of social services in British Columbia. The committee decided to further downsize Riverview in a stated plan to implement other community centers. As further closures were being planned, legislation was also passed in 1969 that deemed Riverview an open hospital, quote unquote, open hospital, allowing private practitioners to send their patients to Riverview. A shift away from doctors trained in psychiatry to administrative ones was marked. As services and beds at Riverview continuously decreased while opening access to it through private practice, another official plan to entirely close Riverview Hospital was written in 1987. And there was a draft plan to replace Riverview Hospital. Spoiler alert, it's never been replaced. It closed in 2012 and it's 2023 and nothing has been opened. Regional clinics began drawing patients from Riverview, and both advances in treatment and eventual cutbacks in funding resulted in fewer people receiving mental health care province-wide. In 1983, West Lawn closed and farming operations at Colony Farm were discontinued. In 1984, the provincial government sold 57 hectares or 141 acres of Riverview lands to Molnar Developments. Shortly afterward, this land was subdivided and became Riverview Heights with about 250 single-family homes. In 1985, an acute geriatric unit was opened at Riverview Hospital. In 1988, management of the hospital was officially transferred from the directors to a board of provincially appointed trustees. The shift was an anticipated one, as the report of the Mental Health Planning Survey of 1979 states, quote, "What began as the sensible idea of using non-medical trained administrators for administrative tasks has subtly become the use of untrained non-medical administrators and a simultaneous denial of the psychiatrist's role in clinical leadership." End quote. Sounds kind of familiar. The shift had been happening from the early 1960s and has been argued to be one of the reasons for the 1969 committee's decision to downsize Riverview and decrease funding. The board, as far less experienced in the psychiatry than the original managers who held doctorates and who were trained psychiatrists. Hang on, that's the dog wanting in. I'm busy. Well, they can't see you, but they can hear you sniffing. Are you sniffing? Sniff, sniff, sniff. Yeah, sniff, sniff, sniff. Okay, shush. No, I'm busy. Okay, where was I? Oh, yeah. The board, yeah, they decided to do away with actually trained people. This sounds fucking smart. Let's do that. Let's take away the people who know what they're doing and put other people in charge who just are pencil pushers and have absolutely no training in this field whatsoever. Sounds like a good idea. That was sarcasm. Here we go. The board, as far less experienced in psychiatry than the original managers who held doctorates and who were trained psychiatrists, were again replaced in 1992 by another board without trustees that was said to give a broader representation of concerns, including those of consumers, patients, businesses, and union and community agencies. By 1990, the decision had officially been made to reduce Riverview to a 358-bed facility with the presumed intention of opening regional care facilities throughout the province as stated in the Mental Health Initiative. In 1992, ignore the sniffing, that's Penny. She's just, oh yeah, I was at the horses today with the farrier, and then I went to George's and I was with all three of his dogs, and now I am being inspected. You can go now. No, I don't need kisses. I don't need inspections. I don't need any of that. I'm just reading aloud here. Please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy my content. While I enjoy doing it, I am just like everybody else, and I have 2 children and a mortgage that I need to pay. So, we're trying to make this a lucrative endeavor. You can help me make it a lucrative endeavor. It's free for you to make it a lucrative endeavor from me. I just need you to hit that little like, share, and subscribe and the little bell button. I just need you to do that. Please and thank you. We interrupt your program for the requisite annoying advertisement of my other products, which happen to be music. So please enjoy 10 seconds of music. You can find me on anywhere that you stream: Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, YouTube, all the things. I've paid for all the things, okay? And now you're captive. So here's 10 seconds of my music, and then please go subscribe to them too. Thank you. Love you. Bye.
The seasons come and the seasons go, and things don't stay the same. What will it look like when we grow old? You know we're playing the longest game. Sometimes I wander a little too far afield. Sometimes I wonder, 'cause it makes me feel like the troubadour's gypsy, gypsy. I'm the troubadour's gypsy, gypsy.
See, now the system is, okay, let's work a system where we can handle it in the community.
Right.
So Essendale closes, Dave Barrett closed it, and so you have, 100 people who are mentally really challenged, need help, food and everything.
Yeah.
Those people are on the street now.
Yes. It's interesting that you say that. As part of my legal administrative certificate, I was required to go to the courts and watch in the gallery, which wasn't out of the ordinary. I used to watch my dad sometimes when he was, doing a case. He was a barrister and as well as a solicitor. Anyway, I went to, this would have been 2017 in Courtenay at the courthouse. And I was in the gallery of the courtroom, and there was a high school class also, everybody watching. And the judge that came out was probably 75 if he was a day. Tall, lanky fellow, just looked a lot like you actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we were in the gallery, and the docket was full, yada, yada, yada. On the television screen was a young man that was appearing by, video, and he was in the orange jumpsuit, what have you. And it was obvious that he was in the little, concrete cylinder block room, and the camera was there, and he could hear the voices but not see anything, and you could tell by this young man's reaction that he was not quite with it.
Yeah.
Anyway, at one point his father stood up and was called to the bench and started talking to the judge, and the father was a man in his 60s, and the son, who was the accused in the orange jumpsuit, was about 26 years old. And the father's saying to the judge, I'm just a plumber. I don't have anywhere to put my son. He actually needs institutionalized. Do you have somewhere that I can pay to have him he needs to live in a hospital. He's got schizophrenia. He doesn't take his medication. He needs to be watched, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so this gentleman in his 60s is, no word of a lie, Tom, this gentleman is crying. He's sobbing in front of the judge going, please help me. Where can I pay? I will work till I'm 90 in order for my son to have a place to go. He doesn't belong in the penitentiary system. He belongs in a hospital. I've tried to keep him with me on job sites. It'll work for a little while, but then he won't take his medication. The reason why that young man was arrested is because in a psychotic break, he threw his bicycle through the window of a restaurant, then went in the restaurant and was picked up for a burglary, a B&E, but he never wasn't doing a B&E. He was having a psychotic episode. So this gentleman in his 60s just crying, and the judge was getting very teary-eyed and said, I'm so sorry.
It was a man or woman judge?
Man judge.
Okay.
It was a man. But the judge was getting very upset too, and just at father to father saying, you're right, I wish there was a place that you could put your son, or that I had a safer place to put him, because jail is not for him.
Yeah.
And so once that case was sort of finished, what have you, the judge came down from the bench to talk to the high school class. And it was then that he took his glasses off, and really, you could tell he was thinking about it. And he was sad in saying 75 to 80% of the cases that came across his bench had a mental health issue at the root of the cause. And he was sick and tired of putting people in prison that didn't belong there. We needed an institution like Riverside.
To that. Yeah.
We needed shutting down Riverview. Was it Riverside or Riverview? I can't remember what it was. Riverview Hospital here was one of the worst decisions.
I remember Dave Barry shutting it down. Oh.
Yeah, it was one of the worst decisions, because there's nowhere for these people to go.
Yeah. It was a very progressive and effective thing.
Yeah, and so now there's no safety net there. There's either families having to take this burden on themselves, or these people find themselves on the downtown east side, and then they get into all of that sort of lifestyle, what have you.
That's where they're at.
Yeah. So it's fascinating that you've said that, because that was how many years ago, in 2017. But the judge even then was saying, these people don't belong in they don't belong in the legal system. They don't belong in a penitentiary. There's too much of this that has a root cause of mental health that we're not addressing.
Yeah.
As a society, we are not addressing the fact. And I get the mentality of, we don't want to institutionalize everybody. No, we don't. But at the same time, if we don't have some institution like Riverview, we don't do anything. The road ends. We're now throwing these people away that don't deserve to be thrown away. I don't have a solution. That was just...
There's only one solution, and you're 100%, and I feel that we let those people down.
We did.
I mean, we're a society.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be caring and everything. Are you kidding? People who need our help the most are told to sleep in the gutter.
Yeah, yeah.
And steal for a living.
Yeah.
In 1992, the report Listening, a review of Riverview Hospital, that's the report's name. Listening, a review of Riverview Hospital. 1992, this report was published as an attempt to resolve the complaints of patients and their family members that had gone ignored for years. The document emphasizes that a full assessment of patients' decision-making abilities and personal support network is necessary, and that a patient be notified and given an opportunity to object before an incompatibility certificate is completed. End quote. The new rights of patients were implemented less than a decade before the hospital was entirely shut down. Also in 1992, the Crease Clinic closed. In 1992, the Riverview Horticultural Society was formed to preserve the remnants of the botanical garden and to advocate for John Davidson's vision of psychological therapy through horticulture. Hey, I can get behind that. Psychological therapy through horticulture. I dig that. Yeah. By the year 2002, there were 800 beds in all of Riverview. In 2004, it was stated that by 2007, 400 beds would open in other areas of British Columbia for mental health services, but places and dates went unmentioned. Surprise, surprise, it's a smoke and mirror show. Give with one hand, take with the other. Nobody'll notice. Neither did the report state how many beds would be removed from Riverview. In 2005, the East Lawn building closed, followed by the North Lawn building in 2007, and in 2012, the last patients removed from Center Lawn and the Riverview Hospital closed. Other buildings on the Riverview Hospital grounds continued as mental health facilities. In 2005, the city's task force on the hospital lands rejected the idea of further housing on the lands and declared that the lands and buildings should be protected and remain as a mental health facility. In 2009, Riverview Hospital was added to the Canadian Register of Historic Places. Other mental health facilities have been constructed on the Riverview grounds, the first being Connolly Lodge, which opened on March 1st, 2002, Cottonwood Lodge opened a few years later, and Cypress Lodge on April 23rd, 2010. Together, these three lodges have beds for 64 patients. So wait a second. I'm sorry. Go back here, Katie, with some frickin' math. We went from the height of Riverview bed situation to having over 4,000 beds to being in 2010 a 35-bed facility. 64 patients. We went from 4,000 beds to 64 beds. And we didn't really replace the rest of those beds too carefully. Like, there weren't any. There was all talk, and it never happened. This sounds like a plan. Yeah. In addition, 12 cottages are still in use as transitional housing for patients from the Forensic Hospital, and the Brookside and Hillside buildings host a 35-bed residential rehabilitation and recovery program run by Coast Mental Health for patients with concurrent disorders. The construction of a provincially funded $101 million mental health and addiction treatment facility on Riverview grounds named Redfish Healing Center for Mental Health and Addiction began in 2017 and was planned to open its doors in 2021. It is intended to provide inpatient care for 105 patients. So we've gone now, so it was 64 plus 35, that's 101, that's 101 beds. Now we have 205 beds. So we went from 4,000, now we have 205. Yep. The focus of its programs are developed to deliver specialized care for adults with severe and complex mental health and addiction challenges. All right, this is still Wikipedia. We're going on to a different section here. It says units before closure. The Industrial Therapy Building. The Industrial Therapy Building was implemented in 1963 with a total cost of $505,000. Patients were assigned for instruction and training in a selected shop, which included cabinet, upholstery, furniture finishing, metal, printing, electronics, machine, mattresses, tailor, and shoemaking. It was said that the program was of use to the patients as they would need vocations when they were to resume life in the community. The shops were supposed to give them skills to work once discharged from the hospital. The Acute Geriatric Psychiatric Division. That's a lot of atrics. The Acute Geriatric Psychiatric Division. The Geriatric Psychiatry Division of Riverview Hospital was opened in 1985. A 26-bed acute temporary admissions unit was opened. The division was intended to be the first stage of a larger implementation of geriatric services in psychiatry across British Columbia. The program focused on social interaction and fast movement into the community and social situations. Riverview is actually a very famous building. It's a beautiful building. I'll put some pictures on my Instagram, the Beautifully Ridiculous Instagram platform, whatever it is. Account. I couldn't think of the word. Anyway, this is just an interesting little tidbit of information, little soliloquy here. The vacant structures that used to form the hospital are now often used as filming locations. Shows and films such as The Watchmen, Supernatural, The X-Files, Arrow, Elf, Smallville, Happy Gilmore, Prison Break, Riverdale, Motherland, Fort Salem, The Butterfly Effect, Final Destination 2, and Grave Encounters have made use of the Riverview property to form sets depicting a variety of scenes. A significant portion of Deadpool 2, including the initial and final battle sequences, was filmed at Center Lawn. Good old Ryan Reynolds, he's from Vancouver.
There was another gentleman that day who his mom had come. He was in his 40s or 50s and lived in a halfway house. And he, in a psychotic episode of his own, ripped a table leg off of a coffee table and put knives in it and made a mace, basically, and then took it to his roommate. In nothing but a psychotic rage. He wasn't provoked in any way. There was no... It was literally a mental health issue, and I feel for that. And I guess, is that what you found in your careers, that there was a lot of mental health issues that went unaddressed? Yeah.
Like when I was in that, we didn't recognize that.
No, you wouldn't have been trained.
Not for a while. And then we did because, here's a staff member sitting there and there's a noise and say there's 50 cubicles of beds down there and going to hear the noise, and here's a kid standing in these beds 2:30 in the morning, and all the other people are hopefully trying to sleep, and he's crying, get away from me, He jumps up on the bed, and I was in one case, and I was looking at the kid, and I don't know, the kid wasn't that old, 19, and he was so scared of this thing that's trying to take him, and there was a big hole there. And he told me, he said, oh, watch out, don't fall in there. And he's up on the bed, don't fall in there. So I thought, well, this guy needs help.
Right.
Not locking up as our only help was put him up in that thing and in some cases, which was not good, though we did have a cell that was padded, because what they would do, they would throw themselves at the concrete wall with their head, smash all, just bang, get up on the bed and just bang, blood. They didn't know how to stop what was going on.
No skills.
Yeah.
And we were dealing with that then, and I used to say, holy shit, so isolation wasn't a good place for them.
No.
Because it was a cell, and it was concrete, the guy could just throw himself on the wall. Man, smashed, blood.
The next section is the impact of the closure. In 1990, the Mental Health Initiative stated that the provincial government would invest $26 million in additional funding over the following 10 years, but only the first payment was initiated, and in 1992, the second payment was 18 months overdue. In 1992, about 8,000 of the yearly emergency admissions to Vancouver's mental health facilities were people with both drug addictions and mental illnesses. The reason is stated that Port Coquitlam's Riverview Hospital is being emptied and the sick are being thrown to the coyotes. Accurate, 100% accurate statement. There's no safety net for these people. They're literally tossed out into the street. That is literally one of the biggest reasons why we have the downtown east side and why the streets of Victoria stink of piss and they're not safe to walk down. You can't do it anymore. And I'm not getting angry at the people who have mental health issues and are addicted to drugs. We as a society have given up. We don't seem to care. And you can call me a bleeding heart liberal snowflake all you fucking like. If you haven't been to downtown Victoria or you haven't been to the downtown east side, educate yourself and see how deplorable the conditions are. And see that in order to get out of mental illness and to get out of addictions, Housing is pretty much the first thing that you need, stable housing. And we don't have a facility like Riverview, and we now have this huge epidemic of homelessness happening because of our vacancy rates and because of the way that rental properties are skyrocketing in prices. I mean, shit, when I lived downtown Victoria in my 20s, so this was 20 years ago, I could get a 2-bedroom apartment for $900 a month plus utilities. A 1-bedroom bachelor suite in Victoria now runs about $1,200 a month, if not more. You know, like it's insane. It's insane. I don't have a solution. I'm just saying it's insane. Joseph Noone, I think it's Noone, Noone, the clinical director and psychiatrist in chief at Riverview in 1992, claimed that a draft plan to replace Riverview Hospital had magical faith that the social credit government would follow through on its promises to expand services in the community once they had downsized this hospital. Noone claims that he was suspicious of the report since its publication. Noone has also stated that 1,000 patients were brought in and shipped out of Riverview annually. Okay. The Greater Vancouver Mental Health Services had only 115 full-time workers with over 4,000 patients in the same year. Ex-patients of Riverview were often left without help or financial aid, which caused them to flock toward the downtown east side of Vancouver. Didn't I just say that? Mark Smith, director of Triage, a shelter in Vancouver, stated that, quote, "There is zero available housing for these people, not even flop houses," end quote. He also said that much of the time Riverview would try to discharge their patients right into the overnight shelter. He claimed that the mass discharges were turning the downtown east side of Vancouver into a mental health ghetto. That is precisely what it is, a mental health ghetto. He additionally mentioned that many of his clients who had recently been discharged from Riverview, mostly schizophrenics, would commit suicide shortly after discharge due to failure to properly medicate from lack of professional supervision. Precisely my point. Medical supervision. Oh my goodness. I cannot stress enough. I know what people say. I know what people are thinking. Oh, Katie, you can't just lock them up and throw away the key and have them live in their own filth. Nobody's fucking proposing that. Nobody is proposing that. I'm not saying that Riverview was perfect, and I'm not saying that any of these asylums or sanatoriums were free of abuse of any kind. But for heaven's sakes, we can do better than just chucking them downtown Vancouver or downtown Victoria and letting them completely obliterate themselves due to mental illness, and they don't have the wherewithal to take their medications. They need to be supervised. And we don't have a facility in this province to help with that. There is no one supervising. It's left up to the families. Well, if grandma's still working at Walmart at 80 to pay her mortgage because house prices are insane, who the fuck's looking after these people who need supervised? Who the hell is looking after these adults that need supervision? Can't bury our heads in the sand anymore. They exist. They need supervised. I don't have a solution to that other than to say we need to reopen Riverview or some facility like it. And whether that means we have people who live there full time or we have people who only reside there and are still capable of holding down a job. They're outpatients kind of situation, or there's a residential facility for them, but they're still supervised. It's not left up to the parents who are still working at 60, 70, 80 years old to make sure that their adult children are looked after. Even though their adult children are chronologically adults, they can't look after themselves. And there's legal ways to do that. It's not a power of attorney. It's called a committeeship in this province. That's what it's called. It's called a committeeship. Andrew Wan, a Kitsilano mental health worker, stated that in 1992, the conditions of privately run boarding homes are often no better than others. The places are run for profit, so they skim over expenses. Very true. In 1994 and 95, expenditures on mental health services in BC were up to 34% over 1990 and 91. The BC government had invested the overdue money in the healthcare system. In April 1996, the Vancouver Management Resource Group stated that the Vancouver Health Board was in the process of developing a budget based on the assumption that decreases in federal transfer payments would mean a status quo or reduced budget overall for 1996 and 97. Optimistically, the same 1996 report stated that due to numerous media reports about the crisis in the current system that suggested the downsizing of Riverview was leading to unacceptable pressure on the rest of the system, the Riverview Board recommended and the ministry supported a stop to further downsizing of Riverview inpatient beds until they stabilized the system. In 2002, stabilize the system, my ass, the system's now bleeding. It's on the verge of complete collapse after COVID-19. In 2002, there were 800 beds at Riverview. The stakeholders meeting stated that by 2007, there would be 920 specialized mental health beds located in smaller hospitals throughout British Columbia. But neither dates, places, nor names were given. No mention of sites opening in the city of Vancouver were mentioned either. No, because they turned off all the lights, locked the doors, tossed everybody out, and then pretended not to be home. It's everybody else's problem, not mine. Really? Okay. Press releases from the Provincial Health Services Authority indicated that conditions had improved 7 years earlier. In 2003, 3 new mental health facilities had opened in Prince George, Kamloops, and Victoria. Along with the new buildings, 80 patients from Riverview were discharged. They did not indicate whether beds had been implemented for the patients who had already been discharged prior to the construction of the 3 new buildings that were immediately filled with then Riverview patients. At the 2004 stakeholders meeting, it was stated that there were 84 new beds in the mental health housing facilities in British Columbia. From 2003 to 2004, 4 beds had been officially added. At the same meeting, it was stated that by 2007, over 400 newly developed mental health beds were to open in the Vancouver Coastal and Fraser Health Authorities, a 520-bed decrease from what was stated the previous year. 520-bed decrease. Awesome. At the same meeting, who is this? PHSA Mental Health Services? President Leslie Arnold said, a comprehensive transition care plan, including input from family members, is developed from each Riverview Hospital patient prior to transfer. In 2013, the then mayor of Maple Ridge stated that he was concerned with the number of people with mental illness who were living on the street in the Lower Mainland. His council pushed to reopen Riverview Hospital to help solve the problem. On September 20th, 2013, the BC government rejected the recommendation of the Union of BC Mayors to reinstate the Riverview Hospital. The reason the Premier gave was that the reinstitutionalization is not the solution to homelessness and drug addiction. Instead, there is a new set of problems we need to deal with. Gaps in the community healthcare system are what need to be addressed. I disagree with that statement, but there we are. The building was altered for use in the 2004 film Godzilla and was still in modern hospital conditions at the time. Conservationists had hopes to save it so that it could be reopened, but demolition went ahead. Demolition of the Valley View building, one of the last buildings on site to close, began in 2016.
But in those days, that's all they had. Lock him up away from somebody else. If he dies, whatever.
Wow. Was there anybody that just gave you the heebie-jeebies, like just talking to them or walking by them and you just kind of went, oh, it's just
lots.
Yeah, just lots. Feel that. Yeah.
Talk to somebody else. There's nobody there.
Oh yeah, you're talking to them and there's no one home.
Yeah. Or they're doing something, in a shop, woodwork or whatever, and the guy is talking about and walking away, and I told you, I'm not putting up everything, and and we would transfer that guy over to the hospital.
To the hospital.
But it was Oakalla. They had their own wing then. And in fact, we had a wing which was right on 12th Avenue, just before the Vancouver General Hospital, on the left side. It was for women, and it's you go by there, it's all grey rock in it, and it's got bars on it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they use it for there. We used to put people in there if they'd been stabbed and punctured, and they put a drain in. It was like a hospital type of thing, and it's for drains. So And I've been in there a few times because a couple of guys got stabbed, and I took my own time and go in there and see. And sometimes the guy figures he's going to die. You know, some of these guys, young guys, and take a knife or shiv and ask him, you know, who do you want me to call? And a lot of them say nobody. It was nobody.
There would nobody come.
Yeah, you know, it's really too bad because then I get the person come in and see Harry or whatever. But a lot of these guys have burned so many bridges.
Sure.
You know, maybe killed their mother or whatever.
Sure.
You know, just.
Here's my 2 bits, and perhaps I should just keep my friggin' mouth shut, but whatever. I think I'm in a unique position to speak with some authority on this particular issue. One of my college diplomas, college certifications, is the Children's Mental Health certification from what was then Mount Royal College through Athabasca University. So I have that, and I also have 10 years cumulative, over 10 years now, working with youth and young adults with different types of challenges, specifically pervasive development disorders in the DSM-5. Pervasive development disorder, in a nutshell, means that the baby is born and seems to develop until a certain age, just before toddlers or around toddlers, is when we start to see those children are not hitting specific developmental milestones the way a neurotypical child would. And so it's at that point that the parents sort of seek medical care and say, not sure if this is correct, or it might be a teacher or a physician or somebody else with some knowledge and experience with children who would be able to say, you know, your child is not hitting these developmental milestones. There might be something not quite right. And so I have training with specifically autism. At the time that I was doing my training, Asperger's syndrome was still considered proper terminology. It's no longer considered proper terminology. Autism is now a spectrum where you have very high functioning autistics, and then you have way down at the other end, which is sort of counter-classic autism and beyond. And some of those autistic people cannot talk. Most of them are ambulatory, but some of them have no ability to communicate with you. I also have experience with fetal alcohol syndrome, FASD. That's what it is, fetal alcohol syndrome disorder. I think that's what it stands for, whatever. Schizophrenia. There's a lot of undiagnosed designations that we don't have words for. We don't have a medical diagnosis for. It literally will say on people's charts either pervasive development disorder or unknown, or it will say certain challenges or no designation is often what's on there, you know. So there's still a lot of things that we are unaware of. We just know that that child, that youth, that adult is not what is called a neurotypical person. You have neurodivergent people, and then you have neurotypical people. And those are just generalizations. I've worked in the school system. I've worked privately in private care homes, in actual private individual homes. I have worked in nonprofits. I have worked the gamut. I've never worked in a true psychiatric facility, but that's only because I was working with youth. I wasn't working with people who were of age and in an institution. But I will say this, it is my very firm belief that 100% inclusivity is a ridiculous notion. It's ass backwards, and it backfires entirely. The reason being, and the only thing I can liken it to is, oddly, The Big Bang Theory, the TV show The Big Bang Theory, and Sheldon Cooper. His mom on one of the first seasons or whatever talks about, this is the social contracts, Sheldon. I think it was something about Sheldon going to a birthday party, and he was off on a tangent to himself about how buying birthday presents is ridiculous. Like, why would you buy birthday presents? You can say happy birthday to somebody and not need to buy them a birthday present. And his mom was saying it's a social contract that when you are invited to a birthday party, you show up with a gift. It's sort of customary. It's an unspoken social custom. It's an unspoken custom that it is what we do to exist in society. So my point being, with this 100% inclusivity notion, which is ridiculous, there are certain people and children within our society that have these mental health challenges or designations or what have you that can't. They simply can't be included 100% of the time, whether or not you and I want that, whether or not that's a perfect frickin' world. They can't do it. They can't do it because they're violent, either to themselves or to other people. They're unpredictably violent to themselves or other people. They're disruptive. So I'm not a proponent of locking them up and throwing away the key. That's not what I'm saying. But there has to be a balanced approach. A balanced approach of saying, well, this person can be included in these types of activities. And so we're going to include that person in these types of activities. Does the percentage of inclusivity matter? No, it does not matter. It doesn't matter if it's 3% of the time, 10% of the time, 25% of the time, or 75% of the time. It does not matter. You have to do what is best for that particular person, and also what is best for the collective, for the group. Has to be balanced in those regards. Case in point, at one point years ago, my children's school was in a lockdown situation because a child had basically a fit and was zooming up and down the hallway with a skateboard, screaming obscenities at people and dancing around on picnic tables, and ended up throwing chairs off of a mezzanine. And the entire school was locked in and held hostage because the teachers were not physically allowed to restrain that child. So that child spent hours terrorizing the other 360 children in that school and disrupting their learning for the sake of inclusivity. That's absolute frickin' hogwash. It's total bullshit. No. You do not get to be the special snowflake and be included if you are going to disrupt the safety and learning and productivity of everybody else around you. No. There's a time and a place. There are social contracts that can be taught to children or to people with these people with challenged faculties. And so I am absolutely a proponent of inclusivity, but I am not a proponent of 100% inclusivity. Some people, for the remainder of their life, for their entirety of their lifespan on this planet Earth, have to be supervised. They just do. However, they don't necessarily have to be supervised in a penitentiary. That's not it. That is not it. Why are we sending these people who have mental health issues to a penitentiary where they are not going to get assistance? They are not going to get medicated. They are not going to get counseling for their mental health and their addictions. Like, they're just not going to. The system is so ass backwards and so fucking broken, and I don't have a solution for it. All I can do is sit at it and go, yeah, this is pretty fucked up. And I stand by my statement that closing Riverview was one of the worst decisions our province has ever made. Thank you so much for being here, Katie Dids. I'm so glad that you guys have stuck around. I have just one more. Episode 8 is going to be a short episode. Sorry, you can probably hear my dogs jumping on and off my bed right now. They're the ones that are sniffing around and making weird noises. I was trying to get away from the traffic because it's spring break right now, and there's all sorts of people in my house. Now, I made the people. They're my own army. Have you heard that one? Have you made your own people yet? Have you made your own army yet? The worst part about this army is that they don't take any orders and they don't do any of the things that they're told to do when they're told to do them. That's not entirely true. I'm exaggerating, but you get my point. Anyway, thank you for being here. I hope you were both entertained and educated along the ride with me. What is that called? Edutainment. It's a new phrase nowadays with the invention of YouTube and everybody having their own access to information in this age of information, free information at that. So I've just edutained you. I've educated and entertained you simultaneously. And I'm going away for a little bit. I'm going to Main Island, which is kind of cool. My husband works for the Coast Guard, so he's working down on Main Island, south of Vancouver Island here where I live. So we're going to go spend a few nights down there, and then I will come back and I will work on my very last episode, in which Tom talks about the incident that nearly made him quit. The incident that he had to use some self-defense in order to remain alive, and it could have gone really badly in more than one sense of the word. So stick around for my last episode. It'll be out next week or in about 10 days. And I love you guys. Take it easy. Take care of yourself. And for heaven's sakes, take care of your mental health. Reach out to somebody, a coworker, a spouse, a friend. You don't even have to give details. You just need to say, hey, would you get a cup of coffee with me? I don't want to be alone. Would you sit with me? Can I have a hug? It's okay to ask friends for hugs. Even guys can do that. Nobody's like, and if the person you ask for a hug is an asshole about it, they're not your friend. A real friend, man or woman, is going to give you a hug when you need it, because everybody fucking needs to. Did you know that when you hug somebody, it actually releases oxytocin? Not Oxycontin. Oxycontin is a drug that people use and become addicted to. This is oxytocin. It's the hug chemical, and it engulfs your body with really feel-good endorphins. Virginia Satir, a world-renowned family therapist, is famous for saying we need 4 hugs a day for survival, 8 hugs a day for maintenance, and 12 hugs a day for growth. How many hugs a day are you getting? I love you guys. Take it easy. Welcome to the Beautifully Ridiculous podcast. I am your hostess with the mostest, Katie Campbell. Smile. We're having fun.